I stand in the wreckage of everything they tried to steal. My voice, my confidence, my dreams. They lied, they manipulated, they made me question myself. But here I am, still standing, and this fire in my eyes is a blaze they will never put out. Let them envy, let them rage. They will never understand the depths of my resilience that lives inside of me. They thrive on control, but me? I am untouchable now. I see through the illusions, their grip is broken, and I am free. The dream never dies. What's up, guys? Welcome. Messenger of the Cross here. So, today I kind of wanted to get into a topic that is very relevant for all of us, and it's been one of the biggest experiences throughout this course of community-based policing. And, you know, we've all dealt with the institutionalized denial, and little did we know that under an emergency or crisis, FEMA and Homeland Security actually run the country and have provided all the training materials required to educate local sheriff's offices that freedom is terror and that war is peace and that your rights are suspicious. Okay, and that's not everybody, but they're doing a purge and even brag about it. Friends in the military and in law enforcement that I'm friends with tell me these things. So the gang stalkers always want to make it look like you're against the cops, you're against the state, you're doing all these things just because you have opinions, just because you speak up, just because they want to, radicalize activism. And, they torture people under NDAA, quietly, secretly. And when I say they, I just mean this system that's been in place before in world history, and we've seen it, whether it was Nazi Germany, with the brown shirts and the struggle sessions that they call. Go look it up. The struggle sessions, the public humiliation, and the ritualistic damage, that is done to targeted individuals, and really mirroring a lot of satanic ritual abuse tactics. You know what I mean? So we know that the whole gambit of society is on board with this. They follow the money, and money goes to these kinds of programs. We've shown how to all the doubters and naysayers out there about community-based policing, mobbing, gang stalking, cause stalking. We have shown, the patent office and all the different patents that are used for the silent weapon systems that are all around us and sold as, communication systems or wireless technology that makes life convenient and easy. Just get ready for the new wireless healthcare, because that's where the New World Order is pushing us to. So, because folks, they have mapped our bodies down to the cellular level, down to the molecular level, and they have used EMF or the electromagnetic spectrum to do so. And there is a resonant frequency that the body puts off in each individual organ, and there are entrainment programs, whether it's the synaptic level of the brain and the electrical signals of the body, and they can remotely kill you. Like I said, if you don't believe it, just go look at net-centric warfare, the internet of bodies, the internet of behaviors, and just like a computer, they can log right into your body wirelessly based on frequency and resonant frequency of whatever organ they want to electrocute and damage. Okay, so, but you're not going to believe that until it happens to you. So all these things that are sold for convenience really are there to be turned at the drop of a hat and become tools of bad people that want to break your boundaries, and to the point of, having the control over the electrical signals of the body. So this is the merger and augmentation. They don't have to use much force, they just augment you to obey. In today's high-tech society, right? So that's why we can see things like, you know, the jab happening and people being walked off a cliff, no matter what the logic is. You know, there's no logic, there's no reasoning of these people. They've been castrated mentally and chemically and technologically. So it's an altering of the genome wirelessly. You understand? So, and that's just a whole other topic. But I just wanted to say welcome. It's Messenger of the Cross. I love you guys. And I wanted to talk today, and I stand really before you today by the grace of God, and not necessarily willingly, but because it must happen that we speak. But I stand before you now to address a reality that is often dismissed and minimized or misunderstood. You know, the persistent and targeted damage to property experienced by individuals who report gang stalking. You know, this is not a fringe phenomenon, right? It's not the ranting of the unstable like they try to make us look when we complain about these things. It is a form of covert harassment modeled after covert, malignant, sadistic, narcissistic tactics of abuse and control, really. I mean, it's a form of covert harassment. So that leaves tangible, measurable evidence. And yet, far too often, you know, those who speak out about these things are gaslit and labeled delusional. And like my whole family, when I went to them to tell them what was going on, they were participating. So of course they live in denial and guilt. Let us start with the probability, because numbers don't lie. You know, the odds of being struck by lightning in a given year are roughly 1 in 1.2 million. So now imagine being the target of repeated property sabotage, nails in your tires, not once, not twice, but let's try 13 times for me in just 2 months. Okay, so that is once every 4 to 5 days. Do you truly believe that is a coincidence? The money wasted? Do you believe random chance conspires with such precision and persistence? Do you believe that? See, we're more sane than most of you that accuse us of not being sane. These are not isolated anecdotes, guys. Across forums, across social media platforms, you know, across social media platforms and across testimonials all over, filed in legal documents. You know, individuals consistently report the same patterns, and that is, like we've all experienced, slashed tires, nails in tires, keyed cars, broken windows, missing packages, mysteriously disabled electronics, and tampered brakes on your car. These aren't random acts of petty vandalism. They're part of a sustained campaign of psychological war and designed to instill fear, confusion, and a sense of helplessness. Now, critics, you know, that we have often dismiss these reports by pointing to mental health, right? And it's usually because they're participating in the abuse. But let's consider the principle of Occam's razor. You know, that's the simplest explanation. It is often the correct one. But if dozens, hundreds, even thousands of people from diverse walks of life, cultures, and locations report the same highly specific patterns of harassment, it's more rational to believe that they all independently develop the exact same delusion? I mean, come on. So, or is it more plausible that these individuals are experiencing a real coordinated form of organized abuse? So, moreover, just consider the historical precedent, and we can take it from that angle. COINTELPRO, operated by the FBI, surveilled and sabotaged activists, openly, admittedly, and dissidents across the United States from the 1950s through the 1970s. Tactics included breaking into homes, spreading false rumors, and yes, damage to property. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are declassified facts. And if it happened then, who's to say it isn't happening right now in a more decentralized, harder to trace way? So let's also examine the psychological intent behind the property damage. I mean, in stalking and harassment cases, A flat tire isn't just an inconvenience. It hinders your mobility. It delays your job. It costs you money, man. But more importantly, it erodes your sense of safety and autonomy. This is exactly why such methods are chosen. They leave the victim in a perpetual state of reaction, unable to plan or feel secure. So you wouldn't call a domestic abuse victim delusional for reporting that their partner consistently sabotages their car to prevent them from leaving the house, would you? But try those kind of experiences like we've had. So why do we question individuals who report identical tactics coming from external organized sources? Let me give you one more example. In 2022, a civil lawsuit was filed in California by a woman who documented over 30 separate incidences of property tampering. Her brake lines were cut on camera, on video. Her surveillance cameras were then afterwards disabled. Her home repeatedly trespassed upon, no forced entry. And these weren't unsustained claims. She had photos, videos, timestamps, and even police reports. Yet she faced disbelief by family and friends. Why? Because admitting the reality of coordinated harassment would mean acknowledging a deep, uncomfortable truth that such abuse can happen in plain sight, and does. And our institutions may be involved in it or unwilling to even get involved and stop it. We are living in a time where truth can be recorded, people. You know what I mean? So time-stamped and backed up in a cloud. So yet for many individuals experiencing repeated and targeted property damage, this truth is still ignored, mocked, and pathologized. It becomes this pathology, where it's a mental illness. Today, I present to you a disturbing phenomenon: how tactical psychological harassment, specifically property damage, is used to mimic the behaviors and symptoms of drug abuse and mental illness, particularly methamphetamine addiction, all with the intent of discrediting the victim the moment they speak out. So they poison the well by damaging the property in your name and then turn around and say you did it. Now, let's address the elephant in the room: drugs, okay? Methamphetamine abuse in particular is often associated with paranoia. So hypervigilance, sleep deprivation, and even hallucinations. And what better cover could an abuser want than for the victim's suffering to resemble textbook addiction spiral? But here's the twist. What if the behaviors people are exhibiting are not from internal psychosis, but are reactions to external coordinated abuse that is made and customized to look like when the target complains that they're mentally ill? Let's be specific. Consider these reoccurrent complaints. Repeated nails in tires, 13 times in 2 months for me. So surveillance camera wires mysteriously cut, like I mentioned, just days after installation. And it's always the same pattern. Tampered locks, forced entries, or just unforced entries the couch moved, vandalized mailboxes or stolen car batteries, equipment glitches that can conveniently erase only the most incriminating footage. How many of us have experienced this? Pets poisoned, trash scattered in the yard, items subtly moved in a home. And now you ask yourself, are these signs of delusion, or are they patterns of an intelligent sabotage? So if this were a one-off case, right, then skepticism would be warranted. I'm not against that. But thousands of reports, nearly identical tactics across states, countries, and even continents. The victims range from whistleblowers to everyday citizens with no apparent common denominator except that they all became isolated, disbelieved, and labeled as unstable in desperate need of medication. So let's drill into this intent. Okay, guys, these harassment methods, are not accidental. They are designed to provoke a reaction, as we've discussed, to make the target appear paranoid, to drive them to hypervigilance, to have them tell friends or police that someone's putting nails in my tire every day, only to be met with blank stares or worse, accusations of being high or tweaking or mentally ill like my mom and brothers do to me at the time of my dad's death. This is weaponized plausibility when the abuse mimics the behavior of someone in meth withdrawal, like erratic sleep, surveillance obsession, or frayed nerves and a damaged nervous system. Then the perpetrators no longer need to hide. Society does the gaslighting for them. Doctors, family, law enforcement, they write the victim off as an addict spiraling out of control. So, and let's be clear, even with video evidence, people are still not believed. And why? Because the assumption is that a person like that must have faked it. That paranoia drove them to stage it and do it to themselves. The stigma of addiction becomes a cloak thrown over very real abuse, guys. And if they do have a history with drugs or alcohol, well, then it's game over. You're always discredited. Anything you report is conveniently attributed to relapse or hallucination. Yet, we forget, even if someone is struggling with addiction or has a history of mental illness, it doesn't mean they are immune from being targeted. Vulnerable people are often chosen as targets because society is more likely to dismiss them. So you don't have to be important to be a target, is what I'm trying to say. Many of us are important to God's plan, but that's a whole other issue. Let's draw a historical parallel again. Look at MKUltra, the CIA's covert mind control experiments. They intentionally use drugs like LSD on the subjects without consent. And why? Because if those people ever tried to report it, they'd sound crazy. They'd sound mentally ill. This isn't a conspiracy fiction, guys. This is declassified and a fact. And the same playbook is in use today, just with modernized methods and wireless technology and social media gaslighting. So, in conclusion, I just wanted, because there's too many things to list, the discrediting of gang stalking victims by accusing them of drug abuse is not just wrong, it's strategic, especially in relationship to property damage. It's a tool of silencing, and the property damage these individuals experience, like us, is real, repetitive, provable, and yet it's brushed aside under the assumption that any sane person wouldn't believe something so outrageous. You see, but outrageous doesn't mean that it's false. When hundreds and thousands of people say they're being burned, and they all have the same scars to show it, the answer really isn't to ask if they're all imagining the fire, right? So burning their skin, the microwave pulse energy. The answer is to finally ask, who's holding the match?